Now, I've been saying repeatedly throughout all of these videos that clozapine is very special. In many ways, in good ways, in bad ways, it is very special. So, I said in first episode psychosis, of course, we're not going to use clozapine, so I can't rank it for first episode psychosis. But when you look at its efficacy in refractory schizophrenia, particularly for refractory schizophrenia, nothing beats clozapine. Well, granted, the meta-analysis I'm citing here might not really be for refractory, but anyway, you look at the meta-analyses involving refractory schizophrenia, it's really clozapine. Nothing beats clozapine. It has been 70-ish years? I don't know what decade we are in anymore. Whatever. Nothing beats clozapine in that regard. And it's not just efficacy. In terms of its side effect profile, yes, there are some perks. Because again, in terms of its mechanism, at the dose at which it works, it does not need to actually bind to 60% of DT receptors. In fact, at the dose it works, it binds to less than, about 50%-ish, if I recall correctly. And with that, because of that, at the therapeutic dose, you get a basically near zero EPS rate. And of course, along with that, prolactin elevations are less of a concern as well. So EPS, hyperprolactinemia, and it has been proven to reduce suicide attempts and aggressive behavior in people with schizophrenia. So an additional 2 perks. There are very few drugs in psych, which is kind of odd if you think about it. That in psych, there are very few drugs that can reduce suicide-related outcomes directly. One of them is clozapine. The other is lithium, which is, again, considering the drug's clinical properties, it's kind of like, makes you think, really. Third one, we're seeing maybe racemic ketamine, but that's a whole different can of worms. But anyway, clozapine, it's really good if you know how to use it. Keyword is if you know how to use it. Clozapine comes with a lot of baggage, as we're going to see in a bit. The perks I mentioned earlier actually are just some of the more well-known ones. But among the lesser-known ones, and these are usually from observational studies, because you can't do a clinical trial for 10 years, 20 years. So looking at long-term data, we see that clozapine is actually associated, which is surprising, because I mentioned earlier, right, that clozapine has the highest risk for metabolic side effects, dyslipidemia, insulin resistance, increases in blood sugar, yeah. But at the same time, you look at the 20-year data and we see that clozapine is actually associated with reduced cardiovascular mortality. People on clozapine are likelier, so they are associated with lower cardiovascular mortality versus other antipsychotics that have a lower propensity for metabolic side effects. So you also have to consider the contribution of systemic discrimination. So people with schizophrenia do not readily get access to quality care. So, cardiovascular mortality. And of course, the risk that untreated schizophrenia has for cardiovascular mortality itself. So clozapine is just really good. Again, if you know how to use it. There is a reason we don't use clozapine right off the bat. Well, one, because most of its data is really for refractory schizophrenia. And number 2, the baggage.